Mike Tyson, the legendary former world boxing champion, boarded a commercial flight on an ordinary afternoon, heading to a city where he had a series of personal and professional engagements. Known for his intense personality and a past marked by highs and lows, Tyson was hoping to use the trip to rest and prepare for the days ahead. However, the atmosphere inside the plane soon began to change from what was expected. A passenger sitting near Tyson, visibly annoyed or perhaps just seeking attention, started making provocative comments. The provocations began as subtle verbal jabs, questions and remarks about the ex-boxer's fame, his controversial past, and even mentions of contentious episodes from his career. Tyson, who was trying to stay calm and avoid trouble, initially ignored the provocations, focusing on his phone and trying to disconnect from the situation. But the passenger seemed determined to get attention, and as the minutes passed, his behavior grew more persistent, drawing uneasy glances and discomfort from other passengers. The mood on board started to shift. The quiet of the flight was replaced by tension and apprehensive looks. The crew noticed the rising unease and prepared to step in if things worsened. Tyson, meanwhile, tried to control his emotions, but the discomfort was already clear on his face. What seemed like just an annoying passenger ready for an unwanted conversation was about to spark a conflict no one expected on that peaceful flight. The passenger's provocations continued to escalate, becoming increasingly aggressive and personal. He not only threw sharp words about Mike Tyson's turbulent past but also began making gestures and comments that many on the plane found too disrespectful and provocative to ignore. Tyson, who had remained calm until then, felt his patience run out. The former champion knew well what it was like to face provocations but also understood the limits of respect. And at that moment, those limits had been crossed. When the passenger stood up from his seat and approached, continuing to loudly provoke, the atmosphere inside the plane grew tense and threatening. Some passengers started recording the incident, while others tried to intervene, urging both men to calm down. But Mike Tyson, with a reflex honed from his time in the ring, reacted quickly and decisively. In an unexpected move, he struck the passenger, who fell surprised and stunned. The sound of the impact echoed through the cabin, shocking everyone present. The flight crew immediately acted to contain the situation, separating the two men and calming the other passengers. The tension that had been building turned into an awkward silence, as many tried to process what had just happened. Despite the shock, Tyson did not try to avoid responsibility. He stayed in his seat, aware of the possible consequences, while the crew informed the pilot, who began evaluating options to handle the emergency. What had been just another routine flight a short time ago was now at the center of an unexpected crisis. The impact of Mike Tyson's punch resonated throughout the plane. The struck passenger was stunned, quickly retreating to his seat, trying to recover from the surprise and pain. Some passengers were in shock, while others immediately pulled out their phones to record what had happened. The tension, already high, now felt almost palpable, filling the cabin with a nervous silence broken only by the crew's voices as they tried to restore order. The flight crew, trained to handle emergencies, acted swiftly. Two flight attendants positioned themselves between Tyson and the passenger, preventing the situation from escalating further, while another informed the pilot about the incident. Communication was quick and clear. The plane needed to land safely so authorities could intervene. The pilot calmly announced the situation to the passengers, asking for understanding and patience. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an incident involving some passengers, we will be making an emergency landing at the nearest airport to ensure everyone's safety." The announcement caused anxious murmurs, and many began exchanging worried looks. Meanwhile, Mike Tyson remained seated, his expression serious, clearly aware of the consequences his actions might bring. Despite his worldwide fame, at that moment he was just an ordinary passenger, subject to the same rules and responsibilities as anyone else on a commercial flight. The assaulted passenger was immediately given first aid by the flight crew. He had slight swelling on his face and a minor bruise but did not appear to have suffered any serious injuries. Still, the emotional impact and shock were evident in his expression. As soon as the plane landed, security agents were waiting to intervene. They took the assaulted passenger for a more detailed medical evaluation and began taking statements from those involved and witnesses. The crew, other passengers, and even other airport staff were questioned to understand the full dynamics of the incident. In the following minutes, the news began to spread rapidly. Several passengers who had recorded the event started sharing videos on social media, and within hours the incident was among the day's most talked about topics. Online comments varied. Some condemned Tyson's violent reaction, while others defended the former boxer, claiming he had been provoked beyond limits. The media impact was immediate. Newspapers, news websites, and TV channels began covering the case intensively, seeking details and analysis. Experts in behavior and airport security were invited to comment on the limits of human reactions to provocations in confined public spaces, such as airplanes. Some Mike Tyson fans expressed concern, recalling the fighter's history, which included legal troubles and controversial episodes in the past. However, many others highlighted the pressure and stress public figures face daily, especially when exposed to constant provocations. Meanwhile, the assaulted passenger also gave his version of the events, stating that he had no intention of causing trouble and was only trying to engage Tyson in conversation but acknowledged the situation had gotten out of control. Airport authorities launched an investigation to determine if legal measures against Tyson would be necessary. Meanwhile, the airline issued an official statement, expressing regret over the incident and reaffirming its commitment to passenger safety and well-being. For Mike Tyson, that afternoon had become a turning point. Beyond the public backlash, he knew he would have to deal with the legal and social consequences of his actions, even if he felt his reaction was justified. As the flight was rescheduled for the remaining passengers and security teams continued their work, the story of the confrontation on the plane was already spreading worldwide, showing that even for a boxing legend, controlling emotions in the face of provocation can be an enormous challenge. In the days following the incident on the plane, the reaction surrounding Mike Tyson intensified overwhelmingly. The world was witnessing not just an isolated episode of violence, but a complex situation raising questions about the limits of emotional control, the exposure of public figures, and the consequences of provocation in confined spaces. The news went viral quickly, and heated discussions took over social media, news outlets, and public debates. Initially, Tyson's fans expressed immediate support, reminding everyone that the former boxer had faced countless battles in his life, both inside and outside the ring. Many pointed out that despite his fame and success, he remains a human being subject to the same weaknesses and limits as anyone else. Supporters emphasized that constant provocations, often directed at him aggressively and disrespectfully, can be extremely draining, especially in an environment like an airplane where there's nowhere to escape. However, the reaction was also harshly criticized by other sectors of society. Journalists, behavior experts, and representatives from the airline industry stressed that regardless of the circumstances, violence cannot be justified, especially in a public, confined space like an airplane, where everyone's safety is at stake. They highlighted that laws and aviation regulations clearly prohibit any type of assault on board, and incidents like this put at risk not only those directly involved but the entire flight. In response to the backlash, Mike Tyson felt the need to speak publicly and share his side of the story. In an exclusive interview with a television channel, he spoke candidly about what he felt at the moment and the reasons that led him to act the way he did. Tyson explained that he tried to stay calm and avoid confrontation, but the provocations went beyond a bearable limit, affecting not only him but also his family and his honor. "I'm not a violent man without reason," Tyson said in a calm yet firm tone. "But when someone insists on disrespecting and offending, it's hard to keep composure. Everyone has a limit. That day mine was crossed. I recognize I could have handled it better, but I also ask people to understand that behind the public persona is a man who has suffered a lot." The interview brought a new perspective to the situation, humanizing the former boxer and showing the complexity of what happened. Mental health and behavior specialists began to highlight the importance of understanding human reactions in stressful and provocative situations. They pointed out that although violence is never justified, it's essential to recognize that emotional control can fail when facing constant and aggressive provocations, especially for someone with a history of trauma or intense pressure. At the same time, the airline involved in the incident issued an official statement expressing regret over what happened and reaffirming its commitment to the safety and well-being of all passengers and crew. The company stated it was reviewing its protocols and training to better handle conflict situations on board, aiming to prevent similar cases in the future. Airport authorities also spoke out, stating that an investigation was underway to clarify all facts and determine possible legal actions. They emphasized that safety on commercial flights is the highest priority and that no form of assault will be tolerated. Online, the story became a viral phenomenon. Videos of the incident were viewed by millions, with comments divided between those defending Tyson and those condemning his behavior. Memes, debates, and analyses flooded social platforms, reflecting the polarization the case caused. The passenger who was assaulted also spoke publicly, admitting his approach was inappropriate and apologizing for the disturbance caused. He stated that he did not intend to provoke Tyson but acknowledged the situation got out of control and that both sides ended up involved in an unnecessary conflict. This complex situation opened the door to a broader reflection on how we handle conflicts in public spaces, especially those where there is no room to escape, like airplanes and public transportation. Society began debating the importance of mutual respect, emotional control, and empathy, especially in an era where the constant exposure of public figures amplifies every mistake or reaction. For Mike Tyson, the incident was more than a controversial episode. It became a turning point. In later interviews, he revealed he would seek help to better manage his emotions and that he intends to use this experience to inspire others to learn how to control their impulses, even in the toughest situations. "We all have to find ways to deal with anger and frustration," Tyson declared. "I hope my story can help someone understand that controlling emotions is a daily struggle, and seeking help is not a sign of weakness but of strength." Thus, a flight that began as a simple trip turned into a public lesson about limits, humanity, and responsibility. Mike Tyson's story on that plane became a vivid reminder that behind fame and public image, we are all vulnerable, and that the true challenge lies in how we choose to react when pushed to our limits.